couple things as we open our teaching time together. Just for our ministry feature for the week, the church that we want to be praying for, we've kind of added in praying for a local church. But we're not going to do a local church this morning. We're going to do First Baptist in Sutherland Springs. Just, it's just hard not to be devastated by what happened in the church, by the evil that drove that man to do that crime, and then also just the agony to lose so many of the people who support you when you go through a heartache like that. And so want to pray for Pastor Pomeroy as he needs to bury his daughter, as he needs to give context to the heartache, as he needs to be able to bury half of his church, and then also love on a community that's going to be asking questions. And so would you join me this morning in praying for First Baptist in Sutherland? Father, there is no way for us to put context to what Pastor Pomeroy is going through, to try to explain what he's dealing with, the agony of his heart, the confusion of his mind, just the inability to know whether to go left or right, just so much that's going on. God, I pray for the remainder of that church. God, as we've already been able to hear the pastor share Christ in the short interviews that he has given, God, I pray that you would allow the testimony of that church to be one of grace, that even in the midst of extreme tragedy and loss, the gospel of Jesus Christ would be advanced, that the church would be relevant in the community, that its light would shine brightly, that there would be strength and hope and healing and grace. And God, I pray for our law enforcement and for those that try to foresee and understand and see when these things are going to happen. God, in this case, there was a mix-up. And God, I pray that you would prevent those kinds of things from happening in the future. That those whose hearts are evil and have displayed evil intent would not be allowed to continue. God, I pray for the murderer's wife as she has to deal with trying to put her life back together, as she has suffered for years underneath his abuse. And I pray for her family, for her mom. She identifies that she was the target, but wasn't there. God, I pray that you would just heal their hearts. And God, may your name be great in that community through the testimony of that church. In Jesus' name, amen. So I don't know how you can't go through something like that and think, what about us? You just kind of have those thoughts. And just so that you know, one of the first meetings that I had was, I looked it up this morning, it was less than 2 weeks into being here. I had a meeting with security personnel in our church, and we discussed active shooter scenarios and what we would do, and we had it reviewed by local law enforcement. We will go back again and meet again and sit down and look over it again and take it in and have it reviewed again so that we're doing the very best that we can with our kids. We lock our kids away, and they're behind locked doors, and you can't get your kid without your card, and we do all those things because today you have to be really vigilant in protection, and we have an active shooter policy here. And we're praying that never happens, but we want to be prepared in case that it does. So, a couple things, and then we're going to jump in real quickly on a more lighter note. I want to introduce to you a new member of our church, Alex Jimenez. Alex, would you stand up? And he's joined our church. Would you welcome him? He's been coming here for a couple of months, and we're glad to have him here. Lord bless you, buddy. And then this week we also celebrate nationally our veterans. And Veterans Day separates from Memorial Day. Memorial Day is we remember those who have given, as Lincoln said, the last full measure of devotion. But Veterans Day is the day that we honor those who have given a portion of their life to protect our freedoms that we enjoy here in this nation. And we want to respect and honor you this morning. And so if you have served in one of our armed forces in any capacity, would you stand so we can thank you here this morning? We had Paul mentioned this morning, one that trusted Christ during our Bible study hour. We also had 3 others that trusted Christ this week, and so we're excited about that. And sometimes I think it's important for churches to know what's going on and what God's doing. Sometimes when the offering plate passes, we wonder, what are we doing? And what am I supporting and what am I doing? And really what you're supporting is the gospel going forward. If you read the book of Philippians is a thank you letter for Paul to the church for them financially supporting his ministry. And he essentially makes the argument that those that financially supported him took part in the people that trusted Christ. And so for those of you who are just so faithful in your stewardship and faithful giving your tithe and your offering, and I don't know how God figures out that math, but God figures it out in heaven, and God has a record of your participation, and you very directly have a part in those 4 that have trusted Christ as your Savior. And so thank you for that. And I'm going to mention real quickly our Thanksgiving thank offering that we're doing. We don't have anything grand or special that we're doing. It's just a thank you. That's all it is. And we're going to try to do something special for our missionaries before Christmas. We've got some projects around the church that we'd like to work on. And so just as you have a grateful heart, and I love the fact that we have gratitude before we have giving, because we have Thanksgiving before we have Christmas, because gratitude needs to precede giving, and giving actually comes out of a heart of gratitude. And so this month, if you just have opportunity to just be thankful and give a thank offering. For those of you that are praying for Christy Watts, continue to pray for her. She's doing well, and her recovery is going to be a long recovery. She had a successful surgery, and she's scheduled to come home from the hospital yesterday, and so just continue to pray for her. All right, here we go. 1 Peter chapter 5, and I'm going to skip the first couple of verses because the first 5 verses deal specifically with elders and the responsibility of elders in the church, and then we're going to pick up on the second part of verse 5. We're going to read verse 5, and we're going to pick up the second portion of that verse and then work through the remainder of the chapter together. So let's start in 1 Peter 5 and verse 5. Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Now, here we go. To everyone, clothe yourselves, all of you, with humility toward one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. It's kind of an interesting again, Peter is very blunt in his book, and it's kind of straightforward, and it's kind of confrontational, really, in what he says. And he kind of makes it very broad and says, all of you, as you interact with each other, you need to interact with each other with this kind of a spirit, this spirit of humility. So clothe yourselves, clothes to put on, to cover yourself with, all of you, so everyone, with humility. Now, I don't know about you, but I do pride or proud or myself pretty well. Like, I'm pretty good at that. I kind of come by it naturally. Don't really need any training. Don't really need any assistance. My interactions with my family, I don't really need any time, kind of have a nanosecond to think what I want, and I can put myself first before anyone. And Peter is saying, when you interact with others in the church, in your family, clothe yourself at work and just all of your interactions, clothe yourself, put on, be covered in this sense of putting someone else first. Pride says me, pride says my time, my way, my benefit. It's about me. It's not a focus on the cross, or it's not a focus on others. It's not a focus on their need and what they want, but instead, it's a focus on myself, and it's a focus on what I want. Proverbs chapter 13, verse number 10, one of my least favorite verses in all the Bible. Did anybody have least favorite verses in the Bible? Okay, I'm about to drop a least favorite verse on you because it's no fun, it's no good. In the Steve Burrell version of the Bible, it's been eliminated. But for now, we'll have to deal with it. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 10, by insolence or pride or arrogance or arrogant behavior, by insolence comes nothing but strife. So then I kind of go backwards from that and I say, if I'm experiencing strife, then it must be because I'm arrogant or have arrogant behavior. I'm proud, have a proud heart, and I'm acting insolent. Do you see why I don't like this verse? How many have ever had conflict in your marriage? Never ever had that experience? Okay, 2. Great. It's good. Do you know why you had that conflict in your marriage? Because your spouse was insolent and proud and arrogant. Are you with me on that? That's right. And if they would just get their heart right with God, everything would be, and start thinking like how I want them to think, then there wouldn't be any issues. And so there's been a number of times that I have been super right, and I've expressed that in a kind and gentle way, and the Spirit of God has said, only by pride comes contentions. I hate that verse. So Peter says, clothe yourself in your marriage, at work, students to their parents, parents to your children. Clothe yourselves, all of you, in a deferential spirit that has a humbleness of heart, the one towards another, which eradicates the very nature of conflict and stress. For God opposes the proud, God resists the proud, but gives favor or grace to the humble. So the pride is me contending against God. God, I know what I'm doing, and I can do it this way. I can handle it. And God is saying, no, that's really not the way God gives favor to the humble. Here's the thing. When we talk about this, the idea of being deferential in our relationships, of not acting in a proud way, of recognizing that conflict and stress in our relationships is a result of insolence or arrogance and pride in their life. And when we realize that and we recognize that, what we tend to do is we tend to kind of like we stick our toe in the water of humility. We're like, is this safe? Can I be a little humble? Can I try some humility? I'll be humble once. Like, I'll put Michelle first once, and I'll see if that makes everything great. And we kind of have this, with this spirit of humility that he talks about, we kind of like to dabble with it, and this is really an all-in kind of a proposition. This is, hey, Dad, you got to live as a humble man inside your home. Like the words of your mouth need to be humble as you interact with these brain-damaged children that you've brought into this world that you're trying to produce into functioning, independent adults. The speech from your mouth and the tone and the facial expression, the attitude needs to be humble. And we're like, well, I'll try that once. We'll see if they clean their room. We'll try it once. And this is an all-in. Mom, this is, let me tell you, let me kind of contrast the two, and I'll use Michelle. Thanks, honey. And I'll use Michelle. So when we lived in Indiana, we had a house that had an in-ground pool, and that was great. Tons of fun, and easy to invite people over. Nice slide, diving board. It's really cool. Had a blast with it, and just enjoyed it. In the wintertime, it's hideous because you have to cover it, and it's cold. And, in the spring comes out, it's warm outside, and you finally get to the place where you can uncover your pool, and it's good to go. And so you uncover it, and that's a lot of work, and spend the day. I'd mow the grass, uncover the pool, and put everything away. There's a lot of work involved, and it's usually hot outside. And so I was pretty hot. And when I opened the pool, you fill it back up again because you kind of drain it down a little bit. You fill it back up again. And the pool, when we opened it, the temperature was always mid-50s, about 55 to 58 degrees. So now, you know where this is going, don't you? So for me, I can't get my mind around how much work is involved in this beautiful pool and not enjoying it. And so I would, after working all day outside, it's hot, mow the grass, I'm sweaty, it's a little gross, but whatever, and I want to go and swim in the pool. But here's the thing that you can't do. You can't walk into a 58-degree pool. You can't do it. It's not possible. It doesn't work. Your brain will prevent you from that level of foolishness. And so what I would do, because I knew there was no way to really accomplish this, is I would back up to the fence, which was 100 feet away. I needed a lot of time. And I would run, and I would jump. Now here's the deal. When you're in the air, you're going in. There's no negotiation. There's no, I'm not sure this is going to work out, because the end of that jump is splashdown down in 54 degrees. And in I would go, run, jump, boom. And I'm telling you, it is incredibly painful and shocking. I mean, not only is it 50 whatever degrees, but I'm hot and sweaty to begin with, and so my body temperature is high, and I would go in, and I would stay in as long as I could, and then I would come up and say, honey, it feels good. Okay, now here's the truth is, like, I could only stay in there for like a minute and a half or 2 minutes because my body would turn blue, and I got to think, if your body's blue, it's probably not good for you, so you probably need to come up with a different plan. So here I am trying desperately to win my wife's run and jump. And then I go back under the water to prove to Michelle that it's not that cold and it's not that bad and we can swim. And I come back out of the water, and yeah, Michelle was in the house by then. Yeah. She's having none of it. If it's not close to 85 to 90, she's not getting in. Anybody in that little? Okay, she's with you. Okay, we kind of do this in our marriages. When it comes to the commands of God, and this kind of a command, we come to it and we're like, we want to touch it to see if it's comfortable, see if it's not really inconvenient, if it doesn't cause us any pain, if it doesn't cause us any distress. And then if we jump in and it's really difficult and it's a lot of work, we look around and we try to convince everybody else to jump in with us. This is a simple command to you as a Christ follower, as a mom, as a student, as a dad. In your interactions with other people, clothe yourself with a sense of deferential. That is, put other people's and their interests before your own. So likewise, clothe yourself, all of you, with humility towards one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Then he carries the idea forward in verse 6. He says, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God. The hand of God refers to the work of God, that God is moving and God is active in your life, that God is doing something. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time, at God's proper time, he may exalt you. So it is, God is, and again, he's talking to a church that's dealing with persecution and suffering. He's saying God is working in your life, and so we are to humble ourselves, be deferential. God, I don't want you to do this. Instead, humble yourselves under the hand of God, how God is working in your life, and God will handle that. Then he goes on. How many of you have not noticed my pillows up here on the stage yet? He goes on. This is me being creative, and this is the best I could come up with. He goes on, and he says in verse 7, casting all your anxieties on Christ because he cares for you. This word, cast, has the idea of a vigorous throw. I was just hoping I wouldn't hit anybody. So he's saying, look, people who are going through a difficult time, you need to allow God to do his work because God has a will in that. So humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God. He'll exalt you in his time. He's got it under control. And so while you're in that experience and you're dealing with the anxiety and stresses of that experience, while life isn't swimmingly great, while you're dealing with those complexities in a marriage, at work, he says, throw with a vigorous throw. Cast the things that cause you anxiety, the things that cause us stress, the things that break us down, the things that introduce worry into how we process our daily lives. Throw vigorously those onto Christ. That is, transfer the responsibility with great effort onto Christ. Instead of my first toss, this is usually how we do with our anxiety. Somebody comes to us and says, hey, you know what? You are way too worried about this job situation. It'll be okay. God's got it. And we go like this. You know what? God's got it. And I'm not worried about it anymore. I'm not worried about it. I'm not anxious about it. I'm not thinking about it. Oh, there it is. And we say, hey, you know what? Look, your kids are free moral agents, and God is going to rear your children, and God is going to take care of them, and they're going to grow, and you need to stop over worrying about your kids. And you're like, you know what? God's a big God, and he's going to love my kids, take care of them, and I'm not worried about my kids anymore. You know what? I'm not. I'm going to trust God with them, and he's got it, and I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to lay awake at night dreaming about and worrying and keeping myself. There it is. You say, your finances are a mess, but you know what? God knows about your finances. God knows the ends from the beginning. He knows that you're putting the effort in, and God will take care of it. God supplies need. That's what he does. He knows these things. You're right. You know what? I'm going to cast that vigorously. There you go, Lord. I got this one for a little while longer. You know what? I've preached often on worry in my 20-whatever years of pastoring. And I find the greatest skill that we have with worry is the ability to never actually let it go, but just talk about it. To just talk about letting it go. You know, one of the greatest challenges of life that we all face is the sense that something could happen to make us feel or become undone. We all have that. If I lost my spouse, if we lost our kids, if our retirement resources collapsed, if we lost our job, if I lost my parents, if my friends rejected me, if I went through a divorce. We all have something in our life that we think, we believe we would be undone if it occurred. And Peter says, humble yourselves under the moving hand of God in your life, knowing that God knows what He's doing and He'll take care of it in His time. He'll exalt you in His time. And those things that you worry about, that your life would be undone if it occurred, cast it. Cast it with vigorous. Transfer the responsibility to Christ. And he says why. And I love this phrase. He says, because He cares for you. Literally, that means because you are important to Him. It's a beautiful thing, especially if you're a middle child. Because you matter. You matter to Him. And sometimes in the midst of a crushing or in the midst of a pressing or the midst of a loss or the midst of a grief or the midst of the chaos of life, we sit and think to ourselves, does anybody know? Does anybody care? I'm drowning here. I need someone to throw me a lifeline. And Peter says, you individually are important to God. And so transfer the stress, the anxiety, the worry, the pressing, transfer the weight of that to Him, because you are immeasurably important to Him. Isn't that beautiful? Verse 8. Be sober. Be sober-minded. Have mind be clear, be sober-minded, be watchful, be on guard, be vigilant, be clear-headed, be vigilant, be on guard, for your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Basically what Peter is saying, he's kind of wrapping up his book. He says, live on guard. Live your life on guard, because you live in enemy territory. And you have an enemy who seeks, he's like a roaring lion seeking someone to destroy. One of the things that's kind of lost in the American church, kind of lost in our psyche, is that we have, in fact, a spiritual enemy that seeks to destroy your life. Not, this lion that he's referring to here, this lion is not looking to, lick a little or take a little nibble. The lion is looking to consume and devour. So he says to the Christian, you need to pay attention to your life. You need to pay attention to what's going on in your life, at work, in your marriage, in your spirit, in your attitude. You need to pay attention to the sin patterns that you're excusing, because we all have a spiritual enemy that is seeking to absolutely ruin us. So, guys, This discussion that they're going to have this evening, this porn discussion that they're going to have at the church, do you know it's not just a casual entry into something, hey, it's kind of interesting, it's kind of cool. The enemy is seeking to destroy your marriage. He's seeking to destroy your home. And moms and dads, the enemy is not... He's not, your son, boys will be boys. He is not seeking to boys will be boys, your kids. He is seeking to destroy, to take your son or daughter into a world of addiction that will utterly destroy their life. The enemy wants to destroy your marriage. The enemy wants to destroy your testimony. The enemy wants to destroy your life. And be on guard at work. Hey, that girl she's kind of cute and she likes to flirt a little bit. Stop talking to her. Hey, those books that you like to read and they're kind of romantic, gives you a little fantasy world and it's kind of drawing your heart away from your husband. Stop reading those books. Hey, your parents, they're dumb and they're old-fashioned and they're foolish. And my friends, they're pretty smart. Stop listening to that lie. We have an enemy that seeks to kill and destroy. Now, in this analogy of a lion, do you know how lions devour their prey? And I should say hunt and then devour. And they rip them apart. But how they hunt their prey, what they do is they look for an animal that is weak or sick, but specifically alone. And if an animal is alone, then the lion will stalk until they get that animal in a perfect position, and then they'll attack and they'll destroy it and they'll kill it. One of the first things that the enemy does to a Christ follower is try to isolate them from the body, from the church. You don't need that. That's not important. It's a little boring. There's stuff to do. And they try to isolate us. And you know what? When you isolate, it's not a big deal. It really isn't. Like the wildebeest is fine all by itself. Probably the other animals aren't in his way. He's got great grass. It's good. But what the enemy has done is divided and divided and divided and divided until such time as you are all alone. And I've got a video that shows this for you.
Look at the size of that one.
That is a huge buffalo.
That's a huge buffalo.
It's a huge buffalo.
These lines go right now for us. Young, I don't know, maybe.
Oh, he's looking at getting this.
They're getting ready.
They're crouching.
She's quite big. Does that mean attack position?
Yeah, it's a touch position.
Who is that female?
I can't see it.
Oh my God.
Can we grab the baby?
Oh my God.
I'll grab the baby, watch.
She's going for him. She's going for him. She caught him. Oh, she did. She got him.
Hey, these Gondis lines of one.
Yeah, but look at all those buffalo coming.
I'm running out of film.
I think you're right. They're way too late now.
No, they're going to chase him. Come on.
No, they're too late.
You realize it? Oh, look at the teeth.
Look at them. They're going to chase
Look at the teeth, Jay. Look at them. You're too late. You're too late.
Whoa!
Run.
Look at him run.
And that one's...
Ooh!
Ooh!
Chasing him.
Big boy.
Go on. Go on.
Oh my God.
Chasing him. Will he go in the water?
You got the lion on him, run.
That little buffalo's still alive.
It's still alive. Who is it? Oh, It's standing up. It's standing up. It's run away.
It's amazing. He's gone.
It's got it back in.
It chased him away.
Oh, they're terrified.
But they hooked the one. Did you see they hooked the one?
Dude, they looked the one.
And they got the other one.
Come on, Buffalo, go on.
And there's another one. Oh, the big one.
Look at this big bull.
Run.
I love that video, and it's an 8-minute video, and it's cut way down. The whole 8 minutes, when that calf gets taken, it goes into the lake, and there's an alligator or crocodile in the lake that's got one end of it, and the lions and but the congregation came back, and when the congregation came back, it defeated the lion. Church, there's all sorts of stuff that happens in your life. When it does, be in the congregation. Be in the group. You have an adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walks about, seeking whom he may devour. Verse 9, resist him firm in your faith, knowing that the same kind of suffering are experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. Verse 10, and after you have suffered a little while. Do you know there is an assumed idea for all Christians that we're all going to go through suffering? After you've suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ. And if your minds will remember back to how he opens the book talking about an inheritance that's incorruptible, undefiled, that doesn't fade away. He says, praise God, because of what Jesus did on the cross, we have an inheritance that is reserved for us in heaven. And he finishes this book saying, the God of all grace has called you to his eternal glory in Christ. And he lists God will himself, and he lists these 4 things. He will restore, that is to repair and prepare for a purpose, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. And so basically what he's saying is that when we go through times of challenge and when we go through times of suffering and difficulty, God, the God of all grace, after he has allowed this, the God who called us and established us in heaven is using it for a purpose. He is using it to repair and prepare us, to make us strong, to firm up our resolve and our determination to walk with Christ. Then the last verse I want to look at is verse 12. By Silvanus, a faithful brother, as I regard him, I've written briefly to you, exhorting and declaring that this is the true grace of God. The this refers to his book. This is the grace of God. This idea that Christ died for our sin, he was buried, and that he rose again is the true grace of God. The idea that as a Christ follower, God, the will of God may be for us to go through seasons of challenge and seasons of suffering. And God allows that season of challenge and that season of suffering for a purpose is part of the true grace of God. That God has a good purpose in our life, and he's conforming us into the image of Christ, and he is going to confirm, and he's going to mold, and he's going to change, and he's going to build us up, is part of the true gospel of Jesus Christ. The message that we matter to God, that we are important to him, that our hope is anchored in the gospel, in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, is the true grace of God. It is the true message of the gospel. And he says, stand firm. Don't waver. It's hard to put others first. Don't waver. Model Christ. It's hard to give up on our right to vengeance. Don't waver. Stand firm. It's hard to forgive. It's hard not to revile. It's hard not to verbally assault when we're verbally insulted. These things are difficult, and God is allowing those to conform us into the image of Jesus Christ. Stand firm. Stand firm. Stand firm in the true grace of God.